Hello friends, my name is Michelle Fondin and I'm the author of Help, I Think My Loved One is an Alcoholic, a survival guide for lovers, family, and friends. And welcome back to our forum on alcoholism and loving an alcoholic or having an alcoholic loved one in your life. Now there's great reasons to be thankful and grateful and happy and joyous, even if you have an alcoholic loved one in your life that you can't really get out of your life. Now, I'm talking about your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your best friend, your spouse, your child who is an alcoholic, whatever it is, whatever that relationship is. Today, we're going to talk about forgiving yourself for loving your alcoholic loved one. Now, what do I mean by that? That sounds totally crazy. You're like, of course, I'm supposed to love people. You're supposed to love people. But what I'm more talking about is this craziness in the relationship where you get so crazy in this love relationship with your alcoholic that one day you're really angry and frustrated and you're like, ugh, you're upset. And then the next day you're like, okay, they have a disease. I need to be forgiving and loving and try to help them. And it can just be like crazy town. You just feel like, what is going on? I'm totally going insane. And believe me, that is the way I've felt. And that is the way I felt really recently. So that's why I'm doing this video. Oftentimes when we love an alcoholic, we have an alcoholic loved one in our lives, we tend to be more of the perfectionist type. Not only are we caretakers, but we also tend to think of things in black and white and be super perfectionist. And that includes with our own behavior. We tend to think like, well, if I learned this in a book, or I read this, or I watched this program, or I watched this video, and I learned this skill, then I should get it. I should be perfect. So then when I interact with my alcoholic loved one, I should get it this time. I should get how to behave with the alcoholic loved one so I don't fall into that trap, that crazy trap. That crazy, insane trap. And what I call it is the merry-go-round. I call it like this merry-go-round that keeps going around and around and around and around. And the merry-go-round just goes in circles. It doesn't really move forward. It doesn't so much move backward either, but it certainly does not move forward. And each time I felt that I've gotten off of the merry-go-round, like I've actually taken a step to get off of that merry-go-round, somehow, somewhere, sometime, my alcoholic loved one has like sucked me back into that merry-go-round. And I just don't know how it happens. Like, it's such a weird relationship and it's such a weird disease that somehow, as people who are super caring, as you are, I'm sure, as I am, that they're empathetic and they're really caring and they tend to take on other people's problems, even though that's not really what we should do, is that we tend to get sucked back into that merry-go-round, and pretty soon you find yourself again going around and around and around in that same exact merry-go-round versus getting off and moving forward and changing your behavior permanently. Well, when I talk about forgiving yourself, is like cut yourself some slack. You're only human, and yes, you're a loving person, and yes, this is such a crazy relationship that it's really, really hard to navigate. And the next thing about forgiving yourself is knowing that life is not black and white. People are not on either side of the spectrum. There's always all this gray area right in between, especially when it comes to dealing with people. And as I mentioned in one of my last videos that you might have heard on alcoholism, is that we don't live in a vacuum. You know, if we lived in a vacuum or we lived in this bubble where everything was perfect and people were so predictable that you can understand what your response would be and what their response would be, and then everything is just hunky-dory. But life doesn't happen like that. I don't know about you, but me, like, I often have conversations with people before I actually have them with people. So I work out in my head like what I'm gonna say and what they're gonna say, and then I'm gonna say this and they're gonna respond this. And the outcome is going to be this. Now, visualizing outcome is a fantastic tool. So you can really visualize your outcome if you do have to have an interaction with your alcoholic loved one. Visualize that outcome. That's fantastic. If your outcome is like, I just want to make peace with this situation, or if you have to interact with them, for example, an ex-spouse that you share custody of children with, like you have to interact and talk with them, even though you would perhaps prefer not to talk with them. And so you look at the outcome is scheduling time with the kids that's maybe supervised if that's your agreement, or if you have an alcoholic mother, you'd like to schedule a visit with her once a month because you really care about her and you want to see her and you want to spend time with her. But visualizing that outcome is, this is the end result of that conversation and what I'd like to have, is a great way to go about anything in life. But you can't predict how you're going to get there, like how you're going to get to your outcome. So be forgiving to yourself if your interaction with your alcoholic loved one just doesn't turn out the way that you wanted it to turn out, or maybe that the interaction didn't go as you had planned. So be forgiving with yourself about having high expectations or having different expectations than what really has happened. Now, the next thing you need to be forgiving for yourself about is forgiving yourself for enabling or doing things for your alcoholic loved one that you know you probably shouldn't do. For example, lending money, lending a car, giving them a place to stay, giving them some clothing, finding them a job. So think about all these different things that you've done to help enable the alcoholic. For a normal person, that would just be like perhaps helping them get on their feet or helping them in a time of need. But a person who repeats the same behavior over and over and over again and who never makes a change is not going to appreciate that help, and they're not going to move beyond getting that help, because if they don't seek it from you, they're going to seek it from like 25 other people, and that's just the way they tend to operate. But if you have done it, or if you have fallen into the trap of continually helping your alcoholic loved one, forgive yourself for that. Forgive yourself for trying to help when you know that you probably shouldn't have helped, if that makes sense. I know really recently my alcoholic loved one wanted me to help him purchase something on Amazon. And he said, I will get you the money tomorrow. And I hesitantly did it. I did. I helped him purchase this item using my card instead of his card. And I was really hesitant. I was like, oh, I really shouldn't be doing this because I know he's not super reliable. And I even told him, you know, you're not the most reliable person when it comes to these things. And then they have a really good way of sweet talking their way into getting you to do what they want you to do. They're experts at it. You're not an expert at it, but they are certainly the most charming. They're fast talkers. They're good talkers. They manipulate and control, and they're really good at convincing you that this is the right thing to do. So I did it, and lo and behold, the next day he didn't show up. Why didn't he show up? Because he was severely hungover, he had DTs, he couldn't get out of bed, so of course it didn't happen. However, the following day he did stop by and pay back the money. But if I had been in the mindset of, oh my God, I knew this was going to happen, and I started blaming myself and shaming myself and then blaming him and shaming him, I would have been falling back into my old patterns. So what I had to do was stop. I had to stop my thinking and say, is this really that serious? And what I had to respond was, well, no, this is really not that serious. And even though I caved in this time to help him in this situation, next time I can try to do better. Next time I can say to him, look, if you don't have a credit card to use online, have the cash first, then you can pay me the cash, then we can do the transaction, and then we're all good. And really, that's what I wanted to do. That's not what I did do. So I had to just forgive myself for caving in again to his demands, and then decide to make another decision in the future, regardless of what kind of guilt trip he put on me, regardless of what kind of story and manipulation that he decided to tell me, and just follow through with what I said I'm going to do for myself, but not putting in that blame and shame and guilt and being upset with myself. And I was upset with him a little bit, but I said, you know what? That was actually to be expected because I knew that that's what probably might have happened. So it wasn't surprising that that happened. I was just more surprised that I caved in, and I really wasn't happy with myself for caving in. So it's about those little things of enabling or helping, because it's not really helping. Your alcoholic loved one is really, really, really sick, and they're only going to get the help for themselves if they fall into rock bottom. And if they fall into rock bottom, it's by realizing that they can't care for themselves, that they can't get enough food, that they can't even buy alcohol for themselves. Somehow they always manage, though. They always manage to figure it out. But they're really, really sick. And so blaming them really doesn't help, and shaming them really doesn't help. And then not being forgiving towards yourself doesn't even help either. So that is another category in which you need to forgive yourself for loving your alcoholic loved one. And then the final category is forgive yourself if you've gone back to them. So again, it doesn't matter what the relationship is, whether it's your parents, your sister, your brother, a spouse, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, best friend. Forgive yourself for going back to them, because some relationships are really close relationships, even if there are huge problems. So you need to think about that every relationship across the board can have potential problems or deep problems. It doesn't matter. And your alcoholic relationship is really no different than that. Because if your father is an alcoholic, for example, a lot of people have issues with their dads. Like, I know tons of people that have issues with their dads. They have daddy issues. Whether you're a boy or a girl, I know a lot of people that have daddy issues. And the dad does not have to be an addict or an alcoholic to have those issues with your dad. So, if you go back and you continually put yourself in this situation where you're with your alcoholic loved one, you're like, oh my God, like here I am again, and I'm experiencing some of the same things, and I keep going back to this person. Just forgive yourself. Forgive yourself that maybe that person is on your path so you can learn something. And that's really the way I look at it. I look at it as, I wish that I could learn the lesson and move on, or that he would learn the lesson and move on, meaning that he would get better and get some help for himself. But maybe I still have lessons to learn with that person. And maybe you still have lessons to learn with your alcoholic loved one, whoever that person might be. And so just think about it as a learning process for you. Do you need to learn more patience, more compassion, more kindness, more forgiveness, being kinder to yourself, being more assertive, setting up boundaries? Just think about those lessons that you need to learn, and that maybe that once you learn them, the relationship will transform and you will transform, because you have to transform in this relationship, because as you grow, then the relationship will transform and grow, no matter if your alcoholic loved one is drinking or not drinking. It's so funny. One of my favorite gurus, Dr. Wayne Dyer, he's now passed away, but I believe he's still with me. I love him. He's one of my favorite teachers. He used to say that, in Michigan, when I was riding the trolley, and I was very, very little, and they used to have these trolley straps up above. And he's like, when I was like 2 or 3 years old, I used to reach as high as I could reach, and I'd try to reach onto those trolley straps. And he said, life is a lot like a trolley ride. He said, you could be holding on to that trolley strap, and people are going to get on and off the trolley. And they're just going to come and go. And you think about the people that have come and gone in your life. And he said, sometimes people get off the trolley and you're like, yeah, they got off. And sometimes people get off the trolley and you're really sad. But then sometimes people come back. You're like, oh my gosh, what are you doing here? And he said, it's kind of like the turd that won't flush. You keep trying to flush it and there it is again. So, putting a little humor into the situation and just knowing that you have always something to learn in your relationships, and you always have something to learn with the people in your life, even if those lessons are super hard. And I will tell you right now that the lessons that I've had to learn with my alcoholic loved one are super hard, and I'm still learning those lessons, and I'm still learning a lot about myself in the process. So thank you so much for joining me. Please subscribe to my channel below. Share this video with friends, family, and your dog. Please support me on Patreon. I don't get paid for what I do on YouTube. I really don't. You have to have like millions and millions and millions of subscribers to actually make a living on YouTube videos, but I like to provide this information to you. www.patreon.com/Michelle S. Fondin. You can donate $1 a month, $3 a month, $5 a month for these videos, and I will see you in the next video.